It's called Zero, a new approach to non-alcoholic drinks. Hey there, fit friends and food lovers. Today, I'm super excited. This video has legitimately been weeks and months in the making, and I'll get to why in a second. And I'm just pumped. It's exciting to bring people's attention to this new cookbook. I don't love the term cookbook though. I don't feel like that's really what this is. I think it's a chance for us to take our blinders off and realize the sorts of things that are possible in the world of non-alcoholic cocktails and beverages. I have, for a long time, felt that the non-alcoholic cocktail world or non-alcoholic beverage world has this huge gap in it. We have the complexity and the creativity and the craftsmanship of true mixology in alcoholic beverages, and then we have glorified juice in a mocktail. And I don't think it's impossible to take a culinary approach to cocktails that just so happen to not have alcohol. And that's why I'm so excited to kind of show you and kind of let you in on my thoughts about this brand new book from the Alinea Group, Zero, a new approach to non-alcoholic drinks. And it is a very, very cool take on the wide world of non-alcoholic beverages. But before we get to the review, before we get to my thoughts about the book, and I've got lots of them and I'm pumped about it, I'm very, very excited, but part of that excitement has to do with the fact that this has been kind of a long time coming. To set the stage for my excitement about this brand new book, we have to rewind the clocks a little bit. We go back to October. So the Alinea Group is this restaurant group, but the flagship restaurant, as you might imagine, is called Alinea. Now, Alinea is not just a great restaurant, not one of the best restaurants in the country. It's, in fact, one of the best restaurants in the world. And they do fancy, high-level tasting menus, right up my alley, totally my jam. And it's the sort of thing that is an experience that blows people's minds. The creativity, the level of finesse, everything I've heard about it is amazing. Naturally, ever since I knew Alinea existed and I knew what they were doing, I have wanted to go. But Chicago is not necessarily a place I frequent, even though it's a lovely food town. I hadn't been, and I was finally in Chicago this last October. I was there for a wedding, and there was a single night where, you know what, there is a chance to have some free time to go to Alinea. Now, I was there for this wedding. It was my girlfriend's really close friend, so my schedule was mostly at the mercy of what everyone was doing. I was kind of just along for the ride and having a good time. But the Friday night that we were there was time, so we were going to try to get ourselves a table for a seating at Alinea. And what's crazy about it is, so I work here from home, usually at this desk, and obviously reservations I knew would be tricky to snag, but I figured I have an advantage. The very minute they opened up, I would be here and ready to reserve my table, and I was pumped about it. The time came, I kind of put work on pause, went to the website, got ready. The clock strikes whatever time it was when it opened up. I think it was at 11 Chicago time, so 12 here, something like that. Reservations open up for the day I was looking for, and I literally immediately went to click on it, and it was already full. We're talking a matter of seconds, and the appointment book was full for that night, I should say. The whole month didn't book in a matter of 5 seconds, but the night that I actually had the time that I was gonna be in town did. So I was, obviously excited to go to Alinea. I was excited to have this mind-blowing meal experience, but part of the reason why I was particularly interested in Alinea was because they have a tasting menu. And oftentimes with tasting menus come cocktail pairings. And the non-alcoholic nerd in me, I was excited to see what sorts of non-alcoholic cocktail pairings, because I knew they had them. I was excited to see what sorts of non-alcoholic cocktail pairings they provided during their tasting menu. But alas, I couldn't. I tried. within seconds, it was booked, and I couldn't do it. So the letdown was a bummer. Honestly, the trip ended up being fantastic. It was a lovely wedding. It was a great time. I don't feel like I missed out because I didn't get to go to Alinea, but I have forever been curious of what sorts of, not just cocktails, but what sorts of pairings they're doing during a tasting menu. Complex, intricate, interesting craft cocktails that just so happen to not have alcohol. Then I got a message from my friend, and honestly my kind of cocktail mentor, Manu. So Manu used to work at a place here in New York City, and he essentially was the first person to blow my mind of the sorts of things that could exist in a non-alcoholic cocktail world. Now, he and I have nerded out time and time again about cocktails in general, but especially the non-alcoholic angle that I like to take when it comes to creating craft cocktails. He's taught me so much of what I know about making delicious drinks. So when I got a message from him about this brand new cookbook called Zero from the Alinea Group that was full of non-alcoholic beverages, I dropped everything and I pre-ordered it immediately. So you can imagine the excitement I had when I pre-ordered it, the excitement I had when it arrived, the day it came. I sat, opened it up, read it cover to cover. That was my afternoon, word on word. I was hanging off all of them. It's a fantastic book. It's an interesting book, and it's an interesting concept in that it is really, really focusing on the non-alcoholic cocktail world, where again, I feel like there's this big gap, and maybe, just maybe, we're gonna start to fill it. As a quick preface though, I do just wanna say there's nothing wrong with enjoying a good alcoholic cocktail here and there. This video is simply about this new book and the world of alcohol-free cocktails, and that's simply because it's a world I like playing around in. I think it's a cool canvas. Kind of the same love I have for creating delicious flavor on a plate applies to creating delicious flavor in a glass. And I think it's an interesting opportunity to do so and not include alcohol. Plus, given the whole fitness for food lovers thing I got going on here, alcohol is often a thing that can get in the way of our fitness progress on multiple levels. And as such, it's something that I often recommend consuming less of. I would never tell anyone to have none, but oftentimes, for a lot of people, it is similar to food, a chance for us to overconsume on calories. And if we're trying to limit those calories, cutting back on alcohol, just like we're cutting back on sweets and treats and cakes and ice cream or whatever, brings those calories down and allows us to achieve our goals and be more consistent and all of that jazz. So there's nothing wrong with alcohol. I want you to know I'm not anti-alcohol. I'm not here being holier than thou talking about non-alcoholic drinks. I'm just here to show people who I coach, show people in the world of health and fitness who maybe want to drink a bit less, options to have something that is interesting, that is complex, that is delicious, that just so happens to not have any alcohol. So as we dive into the review of Zero, what I wanted to do is just read it's quick, I promise. I'm not just gonna sit here and read the book. Right from like the introduction that's talking about like what this book is all about. Honestly, it resonated with me a ton because it's the reason why I get so fired up about all of this, food and drink stuff as a whole. Fashioning a delicious, satisfying, non-alcoholic drink is an opportunity to embrace constraint and to craft something unique and memorable. By removing one fundamental ingredient, alcohol, from their beverage pantry, Chef Achatz and his team have opened themselves up to new avenues for creativity. In many ways, these creations are a natural extension of what the chefs here already do. They are simply flavors, combined thoughtfully, which happen to be expressed in liquid rather than solid form. In sharing these recipes, we collectively wish to share our enthusiasm for curiosity, experimentation, and thoughtful hospitality. As you can see, Zero is right up my alley. It's taking a culinary approach to crafting cocktails that don't have any alcohol, which isn't a limitation, but rather an opportunity to be more creative, to do things maybe a bit differently. And I think that's why I get fired up about this stuff, is it is a new world, so to speak, where there are no rules, there's no wrong or right. It's about what tastes good, what looks good, what functions well as a complex and delicious beverage. So that's why I got so excited about this book when it came. That was that section was right at the beginning during the introduction, and it struck a chord with me. This is exactly why I get fired up about this cocktail stuff. So naturally, I tore through the whole book. I was hanging on every word, and I loved reading through it. And I think, just in general, what this book can offer to everyone is an opportunity to understand the world of non-alcoholic cocktails, because it's more than just mixing juice and seltzer water. It's more than some cheap and sugary mocktail that you might get when you're at the bar and choosing not to drink. There is a delicious world of complex and craft cocktails that can be made without alcohol, and this book highlights all of that. And I think everyone can get something out of it in that respect. For me, what I really wanted to get out of it is kind of a level beyond that. Because I'm already entrenched in this world, I'm not only looking for cool recipes, I'm looking for ideas, for principles, for concepts, for techniques that then I can take and run with to get creative in my own right, to make my own drinks that kind of go beyond the sorts of beverages that I've been making. Because I've loved making good drinks, but I want to kind of expand my repertoire, so to speak. In that respect, Zero completely delivered. I had my mind blown on page after page after page with these techniques, with these ideas, with things that I could do and apply in slightly different ways, and it was engrossing. But I don't just want to talk about what the book did for me. I want to talk about what the book might be able to do for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of review, we're going to have like 5 different categories. It's going to be creativity, taste, at least with the things that I've tried so far, and we'll get more to that later. The aesthetic of it, because I think it's just a beautiful book. Then we'll talk about approachability in terms of like the recipes and how easily they might be recreated at home. And then I also want to talk about kind of like takeaways and things that we can run with and maybe kind of apply and put our own spin on, or ideas and techniques and kind of the higher end, treating it more like a textbook rather than simply a recipe book type strategies. So again, that's creativity, taste, aesthetic, approachability, and takeaways. I'm gonna kind of rate it on all of those, and then after we rate it, I want to show you drinks. We'll hop back in the kitchen and I'll show you some of the stuff that I've created from the book, some of the stuff that maybe I've gotten creative and inventive in my own right. I want to show you some beverages that are delicious and interesting and complex that just so happen to not have any alcohol. So let's dive in on the ratings. First, creativity. So if anyone's watched the Chef's Table episode about Alinea, about Grant Achatz, the chef, you might already know what the answer here is going to be, and it's 5 stars out of 5. Now, that's no surprise to anyone that's familiar with the sorts of stuff that they're creating at Alinea, and if you're not, you might want to check out that Chef's Table episode because it's mind-blowing. Also, it's just a really cool story. Grant Achatz, he's a high-end chef. He then loses his ability to taste and still puts out great stuff in the world of high-end dining. It's wild. It's a really cool story. It's also just crazy the sorts of stuff they're doing at Alinea, and you get kind of an inside view of it all in a show like Chef's Table. So worth watching. But if you've seen that, or if you're familiar with Alinea or the Alinea Group as a whole, it goes without saying that there's going to be creativity. They're going to be doing things that I, as a food nerd over here, I had never even heard of. Things and concepts that I had never even considered, ingredients that I've never used, things like that. So the creativity and the way they're putting it all together was really quite masterful. For example, how's this for creative? A brown butter stock. So you take butter, you brown it in a pan, you add water, you simmer it for a while, then you let it cool so that the butter solidifies again, and you can strain it, and you have a liquid that tastes like brown butter. They use that in a beverage that's supposed to taste like a blueberry pancake. The thoughtfulness, the creativity, it blows my mind. So yeah, 5 out of 5. Second off, I want to cover taste. And so far, just to be clear, I've been working my way through recipes and I've made a mess of my kitchen multiple times in all of the best ways, but so far I've only made it through the more traditional sections. So we've got the back bar, the non-alcoholic back bar, and then also I've done a handful of kind of classic cocktails using those ingredients. So to be fair, the taste measurement I'm using is based solely on what I've tried so far, which is, I think, kind of the shorter part of the book, the smaller sections of the book. So there is a lot more left for me to play with to fully understand what is happening in the book, what sorts of flavor awesomeness is present. Oh, also worth a little aside, I'm rating the taste based on how it tastes as a standalone beverage, as a standalone component, as a standalone ingredient. I'm not comparing it to an alcoholic version of the same thing. I mean, for one, I'm not an expert in anything alcoholic, but also, I just think that's an unfair comparison. Distilling involves lots of flavor that you're just never gonna get out of a non-alcoholic process. So, I just kind of wanted to mention that as well. Taste is based on what I've had so far. It's based on them as standalone things, not comparing them to anything else. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 on taste. Now, the reason for this could just be because of the things that I have selected. I just found like a lot of like winter spices so far in the things I've tried. So there's like a lot of cinnamon, a lot of like clove and star anise, and I love all those flavors, but what it's done is it's made it so far feel a bit monochromatic, where things are all tasting a little bit similar, and not only that, they're tasting a little bit like the holiday season. So like these are almost like wintry flavors, and it's spring and summertime, and it's just been kind of monochromatic. That's not to say that they're bad. That's why, I don't know, maybe a 4 is being harsh, because it's delicious. It's just, so far, the things I've tried, most of them taste quite similar. So I want to branch out more. But I can only base my judgment on what I've had so far, right? And it's all been very, very delicious. Just a bit monochromatic. It's felt a bit similar. The gin is actually a great example. There was cinnamon, there was star anise. It tasted spiced. And I didn't want a gin to be spiced. When I think gin, I think floral. I think like it should taste more like a garden or a flower bed than it should taste like Christmas time. So 4 out of 5 with taste. It's all delicious so far. I just think there's room to grow. So I'm leaving that room with the rest of the book. The aesthetic is the next one. And obviously this is potentially more of an opinion than any of these other categories that I'm arbitrarily assigning to this book, but I think the aesthetic is lovely. I'm a fan of simplicity when it comes to look, so I think it's gorgeous. I think it's really simple how it's put together. There are lots of things that I don't know, it would be really easy for this book to get very, very busy in terms of the visual, and I think they do a great job of keeping it very simple, but really highlighting either the ingredients or the, finished product or whatever it might be. They do a great job of highlighting that without getting too busy on the pages, and visually I like that a lot. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's easy to see what to do, it's easy to see kind of what things should look like, and we're not getting bogged down by too much visual stimulation. It's all very simple and straightforward, and I like that aesthetic personally. Like, even the table of contents looks nice. Next up, we've got approachability. Unfortunately, approachability is kind of low because it's a high-end book, right? These are intricate and complex recipes, and so for the average person, it's maybe a lot. So approachability actually gets my lowest score. It's just a 2 out of 5. But that 2 out of 5 is simply because for your average person in your average kitchen, this is gonna feel a bit complex and like a bit much. They're using equipment, technique, and cooking methods that are ingredients even that are maybe beyond the average home cook, right? So for these reasons, we had to chop you. What's interesting about it is a lot of this stuff that I think creates low approachability for most people actually is something I loved about the book. But like I said, I want my review to be more for the average person, not the food nerd of me. For example, some of the reasons why we might see more of a 2 out of 5 rather than a 5 out of 5 in terms of approachability are some of these ingredients are just hard to find. I went looking, like even things that I expected to maybe be easier to find were harder to find. I had to get most things ordered online via Amazon, no problem with that, but it's just, it's a barrier to being, like, you can't just run down to the grocery store and get vegetable glycerin that you would need to create the gin-like beverage, or to create the kind of like absinthe syrup that they have in the book. That stuff just isn't readily available, and a lot of these ingredients are maybe more unique, maybe more niche. On top of that, there are techniques and even equipment that's used that most people may not have lying around or may not even be familiar with. For example, a lot of the recipes suggest using a sous vide. Now, to be fair to the book, they do have a contingency, and currently, I don't know why I don't have one yet. I've been wanting to get one for a while, and I think this book is finally pushing me over the edge. I'm gonna get my sous vide, but like, it has a contingency and you can do it stovetop, but I can understand conceptually why a sous vide would work better and would open up more opportunities for kind of precision when it comes to making these. So like things like sous vide, things like kind of obscure ingredients, or even just challenging techniques. It's I think a challenging book, recipe to recipe, for someone who's maybe a novice in the kitchen or someone who's not super familiar with these techniques. And therefore I think 2 out of 5 is a fair assessment as far as approachability is concerned. But if you're looking to learn, if you're looking to grow, if you're looking to try new things, this is a great opportunity to do that. So that's what I wanted. Maybe it's not what you wanted. Either way, I think anyone could learn the things that are in here. It's just some of them are less approachable than your average recipe book. Lastly, let's talk takeaways. There are some really cool takeaways in this book. Everything from how to make a self-carbonating cocktail using baking soda and acid and putting those together to make it bubble on its own, to the reason why pretzels have their unique flavor and how we can recreate that in a drink. There are all sorts of really, really cool takeaways. But the takeaways are just a 3 out of 5 in this case. Despite a number of really cool takeaways in the book, there aren't as many as I would have liked to see. I just wish there were more. Oftentimes what you're seeing in the recipes or the techniques described are the what and the how, but the why is kind of missing. So you'll see things like, for example, in the rum-like beverage that I made here at home, it involves taking 2 bananas, peel on, slicing little slits in the peel, and then roasting them until they turn black. You then chop that up and you include it in what you kind of cook and steep for the rum-like beverage. But it doesn't explain why. So I have no idea what is being achieved by using that roasted banana with the peel on. Similarly, in that same recipe, it involves the bark of a pineapple. Not all of the pineapple, just like the skin on the outside. And the food nerd in me wants to know why. There are certain techniques and ingredients used in certain places, and I just wish there was a little bit more explained as to why that's happening. To be fair, that happens sometimes with certain recipes, but it's not in all of them. And I think in some ways, that's just the limitations of a cookbook, right? We can't explain all of the technique and all of the reasons why a certain ingredient is used in a certain context, but maybe not in another. Like that would be a compendium of every chef that was involved in creating this book. It would be a compendium of their knowledge, right? So it makes sense we can't include all of it, and maybe I'm just a bit too nerdy, but it did leave me wanting more. There are things that are done, ingredients that are used, techniques that are taken advantage of, and I'm left wondering why that was what was used. Because I do trust that they tested things out. I trust that they did all these different iterations of similar things to land on what they thought was the best version for the book. And I'm left wanting to know more of why that's happening. So while there are really cool takeaways, I feel like there are more opportunities to learn than the book really dives into. Therefore, 3 out of 5. But enough about ratings, enough about these arbitrary thoughts of mine about the book. Let's dive into the actual drinks, show you some of the beverages that can be made with ingredients from the book, using recipes from the book, just some of those classic cocktail recipes, and then also some creations of my own. Today we're going to be making a handful of cocktails that feature ingredients from Zero, the Alinea Group's non-alcoholic cocktail cookbook. And what we're going to be using today are non-alcoholic versions of absinthe, rum, gin, Campari, and sweet vermouth, which ironically is in a sweet vermouth bottle. But this is fake sweet vermouth and not real sweet vermouth. And with these ingredients, we're gonna make a handful of different things. First off, we're just gonna make a little absinthe sipper, which I love flavors of fennel and anise, so I'm a big fan. We're also gonna make a classic daiquiri. We got gin, Campari, and vermouth, so we're gonna be making a NAgroni. And then I also want to just do simple Campari with soda, just because I honestly think of all the things I've created out of zero so far, I think the fake Campari is one of my favorites. So I wanted to make something that just lets that shine. I'm gonna go ahead, clear my workstation, I'm gonna get an apron on, and we're gonna get to work. I'm gonna be honest, it's really hard for me to pick a favorite. I can relate to Jack Sparrow. I understand why all the rum is gone with the daiquiri. I love the bitterness of something like a NAgroni, and that also obviously comes through with a Campari and Soda. And then I'm a sucker for anything fennel or anise, that like black licorice type flavor. So the absinthe is also right up my alley. All of these are delicious, but they're also interesting and they're complex. They're cocktails that just so happen to not have any alcohol. Also, can we just be honest? It looks gorgeous. There you have it. Those are my thoughts and kind of my book review for Zero, a new approach to non-alcoholic drinks. It is a super fun book, and as you can see from the drinks I just showed you, there are some really tasty and really interesting beverages that can be made in a completely non-alcoholic way. And to me, that's just fun. So this is a realm that I like playing around in. Naturally, I loved this book, but overall, I think this is a great book for anyone that's looking to expand their culinary horizons. The vessel or the canvas on which we're getting creative here is a glass rather than a plate. But I think anyone that's looking to learn new things, to try new stuff, and to create deliciousness in the kitchen and enjoys doing so would love this book. Now, if you're not into those things, if you don't like putting effort into making food or drinks, that's totally fine. This probably isn't the book for you. But for me and for, I don't know, any other food lovers out there that are watching this, I bet you would love it. Because it tickled me in all of the right nerdy places. It was high-end craft cocktails, it was taking this culinary approach to making beverages, and it was doing so in a way that was eye-opening for me. I learned things as I read it. I have learned things as I've put it into practice, and I've had my mind blown by some of the techniques that are used in the book, and also some of the taste of the finished products. So overall, I think it's a great book. I think if you're into culinary creativity at all, alcoholic or not, this is a book for you, and I would recommend getting it. So I'm gonna include a link to the book in the description, of course. It's an amazing, amazing book for anyone that is interested in getting creative and enjoying interesting, complex craft cocktails that just so happen to not have any alcohol. Cheers to you and your new alcohol-free adventures. So, that's a loud truck. Naturally, I'm gonna wait for the truck.